Welcome to another Numismatic Notes with Benjamin. I am Benjamin, and I have to say right out of the gate that if the third time's the charm, I hope this is the charm, because this is the third time I've tried to shoot this video, and part of my confusion and difficulty has been that I got a new overhead camera mount, so I'm just trying to figure out how it works. I'll get used to it, and then the next, I don't know, 300 videos will be done pretty well. I am very excited to share with you a deep dive video into one of my favorite banknotes, the Canadian $50 bill of 1988. This is a banknote that I have wanted for years and felt like it was one that I would be able to get someday, but it wasn't one that, you just find here in Oklahoma. And if you did find them in Oklahoma, I would imagine they're in the same condition as the dollar bill, $5 bill, $2 bill, $10 bill, just wrinkled and rolled up. So I'm very glad that I have this in such a lovely condition. And I have David to thank you. David, this is a thank you note to you for this banknote and how you helped me to get this for my collection. I really appreciate your kindness and the effort you undertook to get this to me for some time. I appreciate it. Let's get started with the deep dive. This banknote actually measures 152 by 70, and it's printed on paper. Interestingly enough, this banknote has no security thread and no watermark, and I think they were experimenting and trying some other security devices. So as we get to the security features, I'll explain the ones that they do have. You'll notice that the predominant colors of this note are red and yellow. PIC catalogs this as a 98. The printer of this particular note is the Canadian Banknote Company, but it is my understanding that there were several other places that printed Canadian banknotes, and they have different letters as part of their serial numbers that might indicate this. The series that this banknote is a part of is the Birds of Canada series, and it was engraved by Thomas Hipshin, interestingly enough, an Iowa native, so I thought that was pretty exciting. The security features on this note, in this curved section of the note, are 50, 50, 50 repeated in every line from the top of the note to the bottom of the note. And one of these days I'm going to get bored enough to look at it with a glass and see if they put some of those 50s upside down, or if they did something crazy with them like they did with that Australian bill with the typo, or they did with that Mexican banknote that has the background letters completely flipped around. Anyway, it'll be fun to find out if that's the case. So in addition to the curved text here at the center of the note, some other security features include this gold foil right up here, which is an optical security device, which means if you look at the note tilted, that yellow will turn to green. We have some ink like that, OVI, on our banknote, our $100 bill nowadays. But this was the first time an optical security device was used on a banknote. There is microprinting along the bars that divide this note in half that say Bank of Canada, Banque du Canada, alternating. And so if you have a magnifying glass, you can see here microtext all the way across the length of the note. There is intaglio ink, which is if you brush your finger across the note, you can feel where there's no print, and then you can feel, the raised ink print, because they will have layered the ink really thickly on there when they printed the note. This paper contains planchettes, which is an old school way of guaranteeing a banknote. It was very hard for counterfeiters to put planchettes in paper, and that was why it was stuck in there. That's a lot of the same reasons why you will find red and blue silk fibers in our United States banknotes to this day. There's lathe work. If you look inside this 5 and in the bars, you can see that there is spirograph lathe work, just repeated galoshes and designs over and over again. And then when you turn the banknote over, some of the security devices include having the black serial numbers here. And then these bars here, some people nowadays say that they were barcodes to help the blind, but in 1988, They were barcodes that were used for machine reading. These little raised lines that help the blind are usually typically in the corners or down the sides of a banknote for the blind to feel there. So these bars actually supported machine reading and not necessarily a differentiation by people who were vision challenged. Let's turn this note over and let's start with the face of this banknote. We have 50 prominently twice on this banknote, and we have a coat of arms here at the upper center, right above the head of William Lyon Mackenzie King, who was the prime minister several non-concurrent terms from 1921 to 1948. He served a total of 21 years and 154 days in office, but again, not all at once. He missed a few terms here and there and got put back in office. He was the 10th Prime Minister of Canada, and in addition to being the longest serving, he was also a doctor. He had a PhD. Behind his head, you can see the Parliament in Ottawa. This is a building that was designed by Pearson and Marchand, and it features a combination of Gothic and Beaux Arts construction. It's a building I'd like to see. I enjoyed all the images online I saw of it under construction and the interior work as it was being built. So this big portrait here is from a 1942 photograph by Yusuf Karsh. Yusuf Karsh also took the picture of Queen Elizabeth that was modified to remove the tiara, and she was used uncrowned on the first issue of her Banknotes of Canada way back in, I think, 1954. And then those of you who love that image of Winston Churchill, which you can find on a Gibraltar 50-pound, that same image of Churchill was also photographed by Yusuf Karsh. Fantastic photographer. Let's see what else we have about Prime Minister King. He is well thought of nowadays, and history looks on him nicely, although he was almost as bad to the Japanese citizens of Canada during World War II as the U.S. was to its Japanese citizens. But where the U.S. put our citizens in concentration camps, King just told them, you have to relocate east of the Rockies or you will be deported to Japan at war's end. I think the concern was that there was going to be an invasion by Japan of the U.S. and the Canadian mainland. And well, there may have been a little truth to that. You know, the Japanese were sending aerial bombs over and incendiary bombs over. I mean, they may have planned on doing an invasion, and while it didn't materialize, there wasn't a lot of trust between the government and its Japanese citizens in this time. But, you know, in all fairness, they treated their Chinese population just as terribly. In fact, they completely banned Chinese immigration while he was the prime minister. And that was something that had been done in the United States as well. That could be another YouTube video, and I don't want to dwell on that injustice at this time, although it is a good conversation to have because we don't want things like that to ever have to happen again. Prime Minister King died in July 1950 of pneumonia. And I found it interesting as I was reading more about him that he had spent some time working with Jane Addams at Hull House. And you'll find in his writings that he had some interesting ideas about Europe's Adolf. I won't go into any more detail than that. You'll just have to do your own research. But at his death, he certainly had a lot of interesting ideas about a lot of things. His writings, journals, articles, things he wrote measured 7 meters from end to end. I've written 18 journals that might measure 1.5 feet. So this man was quite the writer. Let's turn it over and let's look at the back of the note. The back of the note is why David made sure I was able to secure this note for my collection. He must have liked my themes of owls, which I've done before, and more likely my theme of Harry Potter on banknotes, because this is the owl. Not the very owl, but this is a owl in the family of owls that Harry had as his pet. He had Hedwig the owl in the Harry Potter movies, and you may remember Hedwig. over the years. So this is a banknote that when I see, I think of Harry Potter. I also think of postcards because these are just beautiful natural images. When I see this, I guess, snow or water feature, I think of the current series of Columbia, which has, rivers and things that turn into snakes and are all different colors. It's just a very beautifully well-designed note, and it depicts Bubo Scandiacus, or the snowy owl, which is also a symbol of Quebec. It's also known as a polar owl or an Arctic owl, and it is one of the largest owls. It's very active in the daytime, which most people who see owls don't expect because most owls seem to avoid the daytime. And they are noted for having a thing for lemmings, but if lemmings can't be on the menu, they're pretty open-minded, as the occasion requires. They do, for birds, lay pretty large clutches. They might lay anywhere from 5 to 11 eggs. And if it's hard to find a lemming or a suitable alternative, they may not even breed if there is no prey available. They are very nomadic. They don't always come to the same nest, and they don't always come back to the same region. They travel, and whenever they find a place that floats their boat, they tend to stay. Their eyes can be almost as big as human eyes, and in the wild, a snowy owl lives to be about 10. But in captivity, I read that living for 30 years was a distinct possibility. How about that? This is a beautiful advertisement for a beautiful country. A snowy owl. If you can think of any other banknotes that have owls on them, please add them in the comments. And I'll admit that recently I got an order in from somebody here in the U.S., and I was able to get 4 more notes, or 3 or 4 more notes that had owls on them. I was very impressed. And so it may be time for me to eventually do another Harry Potter video where I'll be able to integrate this note, as well as a new owl theme video where I'll be able to do all the other notes that I've found with owls. I hope you'll join me. I hope you'll cuss and discuss with me anything that I found out that you don't like that I had to say about Prime Minister King, any additional tidbits about Prime Minister King, and definitely your feelings about this lovely snowy owl. I'm Benjamin. This is Numismatic Notes with Benjamin. Have a jewel of a day.